Well, hello and welcome to Tool of the Day number 53. It's kind of simple, it's kind of plain. It's wire cutters. You know, there's lots of wire cutters that are kind of built in different tools. A long time ago, right around Tool of the Day number, I don't know, 6 or maybe 8, I showed you wire strippers. That takes the insulation off of a wire. And I also showed you that many of those, because at the same time, you'll need it, you might have wire cutters to need. Well, these wire cutters are okay, but if you're cutting a lot of wire, it's nice to have a kind of a designated set of wire cutters, and these are good ones. They'll take any kind of wire and cut it with no problem. Large wire, small wire. Here's some 6-gauge wire, and you can tell that took a little bit more effort, but wire cutters are kind of a key element. And what I'm doing on the fire truck this week is I'm wiring some lights, and it takes a lot more than just wire cutters and wire strippers to do the job. But Tool of the Day number 53 is wire cutters, and you might find them in a lot of tools. These needle nose pliers have a nice little set of built-in wire cutters right on the very inside there. Here's another pair of wire cutters. There's also wire cutters that kind of come together like this, and you can cut, so you can get right up against something flat and then snip it and cut it. Here's a pair of square nose pliers that also have built-in wire cutters. It also has some jawed openings, kind of like a regular pair of pliers. But wire cutters are Tool of the Day number 53. Now that I told you that, let me move right into Tool of the Day number 54. Tool of the Day number 54 is, voila! These are wire crimpers. Now again, many pairs of strippers also have crimpers built into them, as they do wire cutters, but sometimes you need a designated tool for the job, especially if you're doing it a lot. These wire crimpers have 3 colors on them: red, blue, and yellow, and that corresponds to different connectors. Now this is really important for today's Tool of the Day, because what good are wire crimpers without the connectors? So the idea is connectors come in all shapes and sizes. This is a plug. It has a little opening there. You maybe have seen that before, and it can plug right in. Well, we can crimp a wire onto each of these so that we can plug those wires together or disconnect those wires, which is nice. They come with all different types of holes and different things. In fact, I've got a huge selection of these in all 3 sizes, and this is called a union, where it's kind of known as a butt connector, where you put 2 wires together and you crimp them. Now these are made, not all are made the same, but these happen to be made with a material around them that does not conduct electricity. It's insulated, just like a wire is insulated. This sheathing around the wire is an insulator, which means it doesn't conduct electricity. It protects the wire from shorting out or connecting to something that we don't want it to connect to. And when we put the end onto the wire, then there's still some exposed metal, and that does conduct, but usually we're connecting it to something for that. Well, I wanted to show you one. I wanted to make up a wire for you, and what I'm going to do is I've cut the wire, I have stripped the wire, and I've placed this over the end of the wire, kind of like this. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the yellow, which is all the way on the inside, and I put these wire crimpers on there, and it will squeeze the metal that's around that wire so that the wire is nice and tight. Okay? And so now you have this. So now this is crimped with the wire crimpers. You want a better shot of those? They've got these soft jaws, and they just simply come down and crimp it. Now, like I said, this is made of a special material. And that material has a lot to do with, oh, he's not going to say it. Tool of the day number 55. Double nickel. Okay, so 53 was the wire cutter and 54 was the wire crimper. Both important. But all of that comes together with tool of the day 55, which is a hot air gun. Hot air gun. So this, like a hair dryer, can generate hot air. And boy, I'll tell you, I need it in here. It's a little cold. And I can set the temperature. Now I'm going to set the temperature at about 300 degrees. And with that, I can blow heat or apply heat on this connector, and you'll start to see it shrink. So this is a special material called heat shrink. And so as I do that, hopefully it'll get up the temperature, which takes a minute. But you'll start to see that it's kind of moving and tightening around the wire. And that is going to make it so that this thing is nice and tight, so water can't get in there. Water can cause corrosion. Moisture can cause corrosion. Grease and oil can cause corrosion. So there it is. That's nice and tight. Now wait, there's more. That's going to turn off automatically when it cools down. So with that, there's these material. It's just a piece of heat shrink tube. And I can feed that up and over. I can feed that up and over so that I can cover everything as an extra protective layer. And then I can apply that heat gun, tool of the day number 55, so that that heat shrink wraps it all up. And then I don't have to look at the, a bunch of colored wires. I can just have it nice and clean. It just looks like the wire always had just a nice little tip at the top. And I like to move it up as far as I possibly can before I apply the heat. So let's try it. So from a distance, I don't want somebody to see connectors. In 1934, they didn't have connectors, right? Well, they did, but they were a lot different. And so I want to use today's technology, but I don't want anybody to be able to see the blue or the red or the yellow pieces. So I'm going to put this heat shrink up, just a little piece. I don't have to cover the whole wire. It's also going to give some strength. As you can see, it's shrinking up. Turn it around. You can actually see it just like a really nice tip. And then this wire is ready to go. There's no extra conductor or metal that's exposed. And when I connect this up, it's going to be nice and clean and strong, and it's a fantastic way to go. Now, this heat shrink material comes in all the colors. I'm not using a whole bunch of colors. I'm using black. I'm using black wire, and I'm using black insulators because I don't want it to be seen anywhere. Even though red wires are usually positive wires, kind of like on this light. Red wires positive, black wires negative. I'm using black wires on everything, and I'm labeling them, and life is good. So it's pretty neat. So there's itty bitty tiny little wire insulators and great big wire insulators. The wire that I showed you, that's a pretty big wire. Wires are measured in gauge, and this is, I believe, I can cheat and look at the wire because it's printed on there. This is 8 gauge wire, and it's flexible 8 gauge wire. It's very flexible. Look how much that flexes. That's good wire. And then here I've got some 18 gauge wire, which is much thinner. And for the truck, I'm using 14 gauge and I'm using 12 gauge wire to wire up the lights on the truck. So today is the day I'm going to use wire cutters to cut the wire. I'm going to use crimpers to crimp the connectors, the wire connectors. Be sure to draw one of these wire connectors with this. That's really important. And then I'm going to be using Tool of the Day 55, the heat gun, to shrink everything and put the heat shrink material over all of the connectors so they look really good. And they won't come loose. So there it is, 53, 54, and 55. There you go, and there you have it. 3 in a row.